pleasure to welcome you all today for coming to our opening sessions of a new Academy for Cell Technologies and Innovations, which is a new outreach program supported by the government by this project of research infrastructure for cell technologies and biomedicine of the National Roadmap for Research Infrastructures. Perhaps there is no better opportunity to start such an interesting program as to invite lecturers who can deliver lectures on a cutting-edge research on stem cells and assisted reproductive technologies. These both areas of biomedical research, concentrate lots of efforts in innovation and technologies and hold promises for really great perspectives for personalized medicine and healthcare. It is, again, I would express my greatest pleasure, and on behalf of all our scientific community, our cordial thanks to Professor Ana Veiga and Dr. Begоня Arан, who accepted kindly our invitation to come and open this event, to share with us their huge experience, because I'm sure most of you are aware who Ana Veiga is, and of her pioneer contribution in the field of assisted reproduction in IVF and pluripotent cells. So I won't take much from the time of Professor Veiga and Dr. Arran. Some more information about their contributions you may find on our websites also. But I would like to invite them to deliver their lectures, and I'm sure all of us will enjoy it. Thank you very much again for coming, and please.
Good morning everybody, and thank you for being here. It's our pleasure to be today with you to present some of things we are doing in Barcelona, and I would like to take the opportunity to thank our colleagues, Professor Rosica Gonakieva and my good friend Georgi Nikolov, for inviting us to come over today. The first presentation is about pluripotent stem cells. I will cover briefly what these cells represent in terms of research and also in terms of clinical application. Because clinical application is always cells. There are a number of clinical trials that are going on. This is the outline of the presentation. I will briefly cover the concept of pluripotency and pluripotent stem cells, starting with embryonic stem cells, nuclear reprogramming, both including nuclear transfer and induced pluripotent stem cells. I will briefly cover also how to characterize and differentiate them, how we use them as disease models, and what has been done so far with regards to cell therapy. That will be the part covered by Begоня. In this graph we have all kinds of different potencies, including the totipotency, which is only represented by the zygote. The zygote is the only structure that can give rise to a complete individual. And when we go down the slope, we are losing potency, and we get to the cells that I will be talking into my presentation, pluripotent stem cells. These cells can generate all tissue types except extra-embryonic tissues. No longer full individual can be achieved with their cells. And these cells include embryonic stem cells, embryonic germ cells, and also IVF cells that, as we will see, were. And when we go to the end of the slope, we finish with unipotent stem cells, which are the completely differentiated cells that can give rise only to one cell type. It was thought a number of years ago that when this happened to a cell, and in fact this happens to all our cells, because when we are an embryo, we are also three papers and methodologies describing the process of transdifferentiation, and this is going from one specific cell type to another, completely differentiated. You can also have reprogramming. I will go into that in more detail, and this means that a completely differentiated cell can become again pluripotent stem cells, so the full program is reversed, and can be perpetuated and cultured indefinitely, and they can also differentiate into different cell types. When moving into the first category, and in fact they still represent the gold standard of pluripotency, we go to the category of human embryonic stem cells. These cells, and I pay tribute in fact to one of my, I would say, mentors, Professor Bob Edwards, who in fact was the one that was able to culture in vitro the human embryo. If the human embryo was not available in vitro conditions, embryonic stem cells would have never been able to be developed. So I think that we need to pay tribute to this guy that in fact received the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 2010, because he was the first one not only to culture the human embryo, but to get success from it and get the first birth in the human with this. Is reprogrammed by the cytoplasm of an enucleated oocyte or by using reprogramming through induced pluripotent stem cells. I will also go into that. Going into the somatic cell nuclear transfer, the methodology has been described a long time ago in the mouse. The first thing we need to do is to enucleate the oocyte, who will be the donor of the cytoplasm that will reprogram the cell, and then we insert the cell. In that case, it's a cell, a cumulus cell, that is inserted into the perimethalline space of this oocyte, and then later on activated, and this will give rise to I would say, pseudo-embryo that can give rise to embryonic stem cells, or in the case of reproductive cloning, to trying to get a new individual from this. You all know that Dolly the sheep was in 1997 the first mammal that was obtained by this methodology. In fact, this methodology was not new. In the 50s and early 60s, there were already scientists, and I will mention one of them, the most important one, that achieved this reprogramming, this cloning, but using, I would say, cells from embryonic tissues and from animals much more primitive than a mammal. In that case, in 1997, the publication in Nature by Wilmut and colleagues from the Roslin Institute was the first one to show that this could be achieved. In that case, it's reproductive cloning. We did not pretend to obtain cells whatsoever, but new individuals of exactly the same constitution, genetic constitution, as the one from the cells that came. That you take a patient cell, a patient affected by any kind of disease, more importantly, a disease of genetic origin, and what you do is you obtain iPS cells from this patient, and after that you differentiate these iPS cells into the cell type of interest in the disease you are trying to study. If you do that, then you will be able to perform cellular studies, which is the disease in vitro, transplantation studies, if you transplant the cell into mouse or into animal models. You can even do drug or genetic screenings, and the final goal would be to try to find candidate drugs to treat the disease in that case. By doing that, we can study patient-specific cells at the cellular level, see how these cells are behaving and are being developed in vitro cultures. We can study patient-specific cells at the molecular level, and as I said, challenge patient-specific cells with drugs and treatments to try to understand which are the more appropriate or more candidates for the use into that. Our group has been modeling human disease through iPS cell technology for a number of years already. You have here the references. In fact, our group was the first one in Europe to generate iPS cells, in that case from keratinocytes, and also the first one to try to model a disease, in that case by a publication of our director Angel Raya in Nature in 2009 in Fanconi anemia disease, and many other diseases have been modeled, and you have here the references. The main areas of research of what we do at the CMRB, at the Center for Regenerative Medicine in Barcelona, are understanding the molecular mechanisms of cell reprogramming, as I said, modeling human disease through IPS technology, generating clinically safe human pluripotent stem cells, controlling the differentiation and putting in place protocols for differentiation of different cell types, and also, and this has a little bit abandoned, but we started by trying to understand also the basis of natural regeneration. To finish my part, I wanted to mention some initiatives that have been put in place for the study of human pluripotent stem cells. One is the Human Pluripotent Stem Cell Registry, which I strongly recommend if you are interested in using any pluripotent stem cell line. This registry was established in 2007, and we had the pleasure to coordinate this registry when it was initiated. It's a public registry and data portal for human pluripotent stem cell lines. You can find embryonic stem cells and iPS cells in there with all their characteristics, and you have a link to where you can try to request these cells. Other initiatives are the International Stem Cell Banking Initiative, which in fact is a consortium of 17 countries that tries to facilitate the best practice in stem cell research and clinical cell delivery by also establishing minimum standards for cell line quality control and comparability of data. And this one is also a very important initiative now that we are moving towards human-induced pluripotent stem cell therapies. This initiative implements or tries to support the implementation, the clinical application of therapies derived from pluripotent stem cells. It is supported by an international consortium, and many different research centers and clinical centers are members of this initiative. Another initiative that we belonged to was the EBIS. The EBIS was the European Bank for Induced Pluripotent Stem Cells. In this case, it's not a registry, it's a bank where you can request a number of different cells. This was an initiative funded by the Innovative Medicines Initiative and the European Commission. And even though we started with a number of different partners in Europe, it seems that now this is on hold, but let's hope that this will continue to be funded by IMI or by any other initiative. Just a few words about what we do at the Barcelona Stem Cell Bank. The Barcelona Stem Cell Bank is a unit of the Center of Regenerative Medicine, and what we do is to derive, maintain, characterize, preserve, bank and register embryonic stem cell lines and human-induced pluripotent stem cells. What we do and what we provide as services is the project management of what clinical researchers and researchers want to do. We derive the primary culture from which we will obtain the iPS cell. We generate the iPS cell by using different methods depending on the use of the cell, both integrative and non-integrative methods, now more moving to this category. We characterize the cells, we bank them, and we register them. And there are a number of different possibilities for collaboration, and I take the opportunity to invite you to consider the possibility to work with us or to share what you are doing in case you are interested. For example, one of the possibilities is that we together are involved in a project where we want to generate iPS cells from a specific disease. We also, and this is patient-specific cell-based disease models, we tailor human somatic or stem cells. We can do genome editing in these cells. There are different number of things that we can do at the CMRB and that constitute opportunities for collaboration, because what we want to do is be able to answer clinically relevant questions or help you to to answer clinical relevant questions, and we would be extremely happy to work with you or to provide any support in your investigations. And now it's the turn of Begoña. Begoña is the coordinator of the Barcelona Stem Cell Bank. We have been working together for, I would say, a number of years. I will not say how many, because she was also a clinical embryologist, and we worked together in the shells for a number of years. And we both moved to, I would say, pluripotent stem cell research together, and she will be happy to provide you some information regarding the status of cell therapy in human pluripotent stem cell medicine. So thank you, and I'll be back when she
Good morning. Before continuing the presentation, I want to thank the kind invitation to Professor Cavatiere and Dr. Niccolo. Pluripotent stem cells have been derived to many kinds of differentiating cells. Regarding clinical application, pluripotent stem cells have been derived to retinal pigment epithelium, to corneal epithelium, dopaminergic ganglions, oligodendrocytes, pancreatic beta cells, cardiomyocytes, and others, to try to treat macular degeneration, type 1 diabetes, a spinal cord injury, myocardial infarct, Parkinson's disease, graft versus host disease. This that now we are going to see. The first clinical trial with embryonic stem cell derivatives was put in place in 2010 by a company, Geron Corporation, in the US. This company treat patients with spinal cord injury with oligodendrocytes derived from embryonic stem cells. After 1 year more or less, after treating 5 patients, the company canceled the trial for economic reasons. More or less at the same time, another American company, Advanced Cell Technology, put in place another clinical trial for treat macular degeneration using retinal epithelium derived also from embryonic stem cells. You are saving time and money, because as you can imagine, generating IPS for each patient is time consuming, and the clinical trials plan in Japan has to move another person with macular degeneration, in this case with the cells from adult, IPS from adult. Last month, some other clinical trials have put in place for therapeutics with the University of San Diego.
Now is the time if you have some questions. I think it's a very good opportunity to use it and gain as much knowledge as we can.
Primero, muchas gracias a Dr. Arán y a usted. Tengo dos preguntas, pero voy a preguntar en inglés. First of all, thank you. I wanted to ask about mesenchymal stem cells, because the stress of the presentation was on embryonic stem cells and induced pluripotent stem cells. But do you think that there are some future with the mesenchymal stem cells therapy in humans, because they are easy to obtain and they are vastly implemented in veterinary medicine? And the second question, of course, is about the price of those therapies. Thank you.
if I understood correctly, you are talking about other possible stem cells that are not pluripotent, mesenchymal stem cells, for example. Well, we don't work with those cells in our institute. It's only that we only work with pluripotent stem cells. The idea of using those cells for research and for therapy is very correct. But our criticism towards these cells is that they are sometimes being used in an uncontrolled way. It means that the ones that use them, they collect them from blood or from fat or from whatever other source, and they use them empirically. This is without knowing exactly what is the goal of putting these cells into that specific place, and without knowing exactly what is the mechanism of action of these cells. Do they integrate or not? Do they differentiate into other cell types or not? Is that these cells contribute to the relief of symptoms by the contribution of growth factors that they provide? This is a little bit a concern, and I don't know if this is the case in your country, but in other countries in Europe and in the United States and other places, there are a number of clinics that are using these cells in a way that is completely uncontrolled and also lacking a scientific basis. Proof of the action of these cells is good enough, but also that it can be dangerous for a patient. So we need to be really careful on what we do. Preclinical clinical experiments have to be performed with animals, not only mouse model, but also bigger animals that are closer to the human. And we have to be really convinced that what we do is not only safe, but has a scientific basis that is good enough. I don't remember the second part of this.
What is the price?
The price. The price of our services.
The price of embryonic cells.
Up to now, it's quite expensive. It's quite expensive. I cannot give you figures because I don't have them available, but putting in place a clinical trial is something that takes long, because the Medicines Agency, both the European and the FDA, which are the most known ones, demand or request a lot of information, and it takes a long time to collect all this information and to put it in the correct format for them to be accepted. But also the preclinical work that is needed before moving into the clinical trials is also something really expensive. As you have seen from what Begonia has built, most of the times there is a company that sponsors the clinical trial. Not only scientists that are involved, or clinical scientists, but also a company that most of the times provides the funding to perform that.
Thank you. Other questions? Then I will use the time for thinking to ask also a question. I've been thinking of, actually I would like to know your opinion about how safe are iPS cells, because there are some problems. If you, there are some publications, there are a number of publications actually, comparing embryonic stem cells and iPS cells, showing that iPS cells have some deviations, some microRNA, some genetic deviations that could be dangerous. And do you think this is
for stem cells, including the Bulgarian registry for bone marrow donors, and also very small public cord blood bank. And I would like to move to the use of cord blood stem cells for allogenic stem cell transplantation. What is your opinion about the culturing and the increase, in order to increase the number of stem cells and their future use, cord blood, increase the number of cord blood cells and their future use in order to have the necessary number for transplantation, let's say for immune deficiencies or for hematopoietic stem cell transplantation of patients with hematological malignancies.
We don't collect blood samples. I mean, our stem cell bank is only from pluripotent stem cells. We are, in fact, in contact with the Barcelona cord blood stem cell bank. I know they are doing a little bit of progress in trying to expand the number of cells that are available, as you perfectly know. Most of the cases, these samples can only be used for children or for low-weight adults. So in some cases, you need to use 2 samples to treat a specific disease. And I'm afraid I don't know exactly where is the update on the expansion of the cells, but I think progress has been made so far. If you are interested, as I said, we are in very close contact. One of our projects is with them, with the Barcelona cord blood stem cell bank, and we could share this information, and I'm sure that they will be very happy to interact with you and to put things in common. In fact, I know that there is a network which is in fact a consortium or an initiative that puts together all the data from cord blood banks in Europe and I think in the world to try to facilitate the collaboration and only the moving of the cells of the cord blood samples from one place to the other. Of the future in ART laboratories. And what I will cover in this presentation is possible generation of gametes from stem cells. And as I said in my previous presentation, pluripotent stem cells can give rise to any kind of cell, and in this case, gametes can also be obtained. And also I will cover, that's a completely different topic, germline genome editing and what has been done so far and what is the update of the situation. Again, the same scheme. I will only concentrate in pluripotent stem cells, and I wanted to bring to your attention a paper that we recently published with a group of stem cells of Eshrek regarding 2 decades of embryonic stem cells, a historical review. This was a paper that we put in place trying to cover as a review what has been done so far. Embryonic stem cells were described for the first time in 1998, so it's now and 2 decades of these kind of cells, and extensive progress has been done. Moving into the generation of gametes from pluripotent stem cells, I will not go through all this graph, which in fact comes from a review from a Japanese group, which is really the leader in gamete generation from stem cells, the group of military side 2. And this is to show how complex it is from an embryo and later on from human being to obtain gametes. There are a number of different things that need to be achieved. Different types of cells have to be obtained, primordial germ cells, then these cells migrate, then the cells differentiate, then these cells have to achieve a number of methylation processes. Not only that, these cells have to divide their chromosomal content, their genomic content during the meiosis to obtain haploid cells, and this has to be done in perfect synchrony with a number of events regarding the expression of certain genes. This is only to try to show how complex these events are, this whole process is, and trying to achieve all this in vitro conditions is really a challenge that needs to be considered. The work that has been done so far comes mostly from mouse. Obviously, the human situation needs to be considered if we want to obtain gametes from humans, from infertile persons that can be used in the lab to obtain embryos. But obviously there are ethical concerns that need to be addressed. If you obtain a cell, an haploid cell, that you assume that is kind of progenitor of spermatozoon in the mouse, take this cell, you do an ICSI, you put the embryo back into a foster mother, and you look if the offspring is correct. Definition can be performed in stem cells that later on can give rise to differentiation into gametes, then later on can be used to give rise to an embryo. Spermatogonial stem cells or zygotes or embryos. Very briefly, covering the first part, I would say that some work has been done. There is not much difficulty, even though there are certain issues that need to be considered regarding not complete editing of certain lines, but if you try to edit a huge number of cells, you can then select the ones that have been edited and forget the rest, which is not the case when you are trying to use this methodology in embryos. You are using one embryo, one cell embryo, that in fact is the ideal situation, because it is where you would obtain the highest efficiency. But in any case, mosaicism and indels are concerns that need to be addressed. There are certain limitations when we consider embryo genome editing. The editing of human embryos requires, after this editing, the use of PGD in order to identify the modified embryos from the non-modified, or the ones with off-target effects. So you edit the embryo, but then you need to assess what you have done, because this is not 100% efficient, and in certain cases there are problems that may arise. So at the end, the sequencing of the full genome is required, and we need to take into consideration that embryos are mosaic by definition, and also because of the use of this technique, the generation of chimera and mosaic embryos is a result of inefficient nucleus coating or inaccurate DNA repair before the embryo undergoes cleavage, and this will remain undetected. And you have here the different mosaicism types that can be obtained, and when you take a biopsy from these embryos, what you get as a result, and this is something that you need to consider, not only after genome editing, but also after pre-implantation genetic diagnosis. Genome engineering through CRISPR-Cas technology in the human germline and pluripotent stem cells was an article that we produced in 2016. The first author is Barcelona, and in fact this is from the group of stem cells at the ESRE, and we tried to review all critical, technical and ethical issues that should deter from employing this methodology in the human. And in fact what we consider were, at the end, the indications to perform genome editing. The first thing to take into consideration is that if we want to use this methodology when both members of the couple are carriers of an autosomal recessive disease, one member is affected of an autosomal dominant disease, I would say that PGD is the method of choice in those cases. You don't need to go to genome editing. In those cases, PGD methods are available. We have been using this methodology for a number of years, and easier and safer to use PGD to try to identify and implant the embryos that are not at risk in those cases. There are other cases in which, we will see them later on, but there has been a publication, in fact, by a group in Paris at Clara Hospital, a group of Nelly Friedman, that tried to say that, yes, PGD is the solution for those cases, but in those cases you obtain a number of affected embryos that you could try to edit to obtain more embryos to be transferred. This is true, and theoretically speaking, this is really true. I mean, if you get a number of embryos that need to be discarded because they are affected of the disease, by using germline genome editing, you could increase the number of embryos available. In those cases, and they present their results on the PhD program from 2011 to 2016, 358 couples. In 95 of these couples, pregnancy was obtained, and in 2014 cycles, no embryo transfer could be performed because there were no embryos that were available. And 959 affected embryos were discovered. So these authors claim that genome editing should be considered as a potential tool to enable the rescue of these affected embryos and increase the number of available embryos for transfer in PGD couples. Theoretically speaking, this is true, but I have to say, when analyzing the results of this group, is that the stimulation protocols that they use gave them only the possibility to obtain a very limited number of embryos, and the results that they obtained were also quite, I would say, insufficient. If you apply good stimulation protocols, you obtain a good number of embryos. Even if you accumulate embryos in those cases, most of the genetic disease carriers will get a pregnancy after using it. Even though I agree that in certain cases genome editing would be the only solution. Other cases in which PGD is not working, you cannot use it because you do not have any embryos available.
So, any questions? I need some thermostat. Questions about this really powerful and I would say in some sense dangerous technique. And the problem is that it's relatively easy compared to the previous techniques.
Easier, less expensive, molecular biologists familiar with molecular biology techniques can use it.
So, if there are no more questions, I will just make a comment maybe just at the end of those presentations. First of all, I want to thank Anna and Begonia for accepting this invitation and going through the trouble of coming from Barcelona to Sofia and back. I think we should be grateful for that. Secondly, I want to thank them for making it possible to have the opportunity to be able to collaborate with their institutions, because as you see, the work that they are doing is quite advanced, and we all may benefit from that. And I will finish with a comment about maybe the future. It's being involved mostly in the field of assisted reproduction. As I see it at this point, we have one limitation. It's the success rate, which is not going up anymore, I guess. And the second thing is, well, at least until now, for the time being, and the second thing is that we have, well, more or less two reasons for that. One reason is that we do not have enough gametes, especially in women, because reproductive age is going up, and the possibility of having enough oocytes, and that those oocytes are euploid, and with that euploid embryos, is not that great. Even when we do PGS, so we just take out all the embryos that are not euploid, we don't get success rates much above 50% or more. So basically, we don't have enough embryos that we can even test. And the second thing is, even if we have enough embryos, the endometrium is not susceptible to them. They can't implant. So what do we not know? We don't still know how to be able to achieve that we have a lot of embryos in women that have a almost depleted or big primary reserve. And the second thing is, even though we have enough embryos, which are euploid and with good perspective for implantation, we don't know much about the endometrium, or rather nothing, to be honest, on how the endometrium works. And in some cases, like the thin endometrium with women with Asherman syndrome and things like that, we don't have even an endometrium at all. So maybe the future, as I see it in assisted reproduction, will be the possibility of creating gametes from stem cells, maybe editing them in some cases, but maybe after many years from now. And the third thing is, again, maybe using stem cells or at least stem cell research on the endometrium in understanding how the endometrium works, and maybe even replacing endometrium, which would never be competent enough to be able to facilitate an implantation of an egg. So the future is wide open, I guess, for the younger people, of course, because it will take probably 20, 30, 50 years from now until we achieve many of the goals that we can set in that sense. Okay? So if you don't have any questions, I think we should all thank our presenters here.
Thank you all for attending this lecture and this session. I hope it's been enjoyable for everybody. And now I would invite you all of you to have some free discussion between you together with and Begona establish some contacts in the kitchen, in the foyer, in the faculty. Then after relaxing for half an hour, we will start a short workshop where Begonia are invited to participate as guest moderators. It's meant as a more informal workshop of embryologists and colleagues who are more deeply, specifically involved in IVF and assisted reproduction. So that there may be some discussion about experience, sharing some this future experience of our guests in IVF, legal, regulatory issues, organizations, workforce. So please, for this workshop, because capacity is limited, please register and be aware of this, that really, so more participants as embryologists and involved colleagues are.
Нови организирани екскурзии на драматурги, изкуства, всеки път има.
Две думи са, че две думи.
Thank you. Send me an email and I will reply by.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello.
Важно е финала вече. Много давно не гледам.
No, you tell us.
Colleagues, again, welcome to our workshop. Many of you have attended the lectures of Professor Veiga and witnessed this comprehensive research and deep experience in the work with pluripotent cells. Very valuable was that Professor Veiga and Begonia shared with us the expertise, what is feasible, what is valuable, what are the directions where we can eventually contribute with this. So I can invite you with some questions that are written from the lectures, some hot topics which relate to the practice in your IVF centers. To share with us, to ask Professor Veiga, because now we have this opportunity, which is really rare, to face her experience personally and to hear from her things which cannot be so offered by a public society. So I would like to invite also Dr. Georgi Nikol on behalf of the societies for human embryology and reproduction and regenerative medicine, who are co-organizers of this workshop, to give some introduction. And I don't know if somebody of you would like to ask some questions to put topics or something.
Okay. She caught me off guard. I mean, was not prepared for a talk at all, but first welcome to you all. I know that some have been at the lecture, so if you have any questions to Professor Veiga or to Begonia, then you can ask her if you hadn't the opportunity to ask before. I don't know if anyone has well, the questions, but has anybody prepared a presentation or something just to let me know? No, okay. So you can ask any questions regarding stem cells, stem cell banking, and of course assisted reproduction, which is the main field of this workshop. Trial banking of gametes and embryos, banking, oocyte donations, sperm donation, pre-implantation genetic diagnosis and testing, new protocols, whatever you want to ask. I can assure you, Professor Veiga is capable of giving interesting answers. I know from yesterday, but I guess since you both work in the field of assisted reproduction, your contribution would be equally welcome. So please do not hesitate, ask questions, whatever interests you, you can ask. Okay? So and just to let you know, they have to leave at 2 o'clock, 2:30, something like that at the most. So we don't have much time. So, any questions on the lecture, first of all? On the lectures. Okay? Don't be shy, come on.
May I ask, I'm not supposed to ask questions, but is it possible to know what
institutions?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where do they work?
So they present themselves, okay?
Are all of them clinical embryologists?
Okay, how many are clinical embryologists? You raise your hand.
So at least you have some experience.
Well,
working in an IVF lab or
at least half.
Okay. Okay. And the rest?
The rest are from the university?
Researchers and university teachers.
Okay.
Okay, so
there is a group, excuse me, just to intervene, from the Medical University, the group in biology development, and Professor Delimitrova is representing, so he's head of the group, who are also very involved in the cell biology of embryonic development, cytokinetic studies, and so on. So researchers are represented, including with Professor Pankov. at the chair of histology and cytology. I see some people who work on stem cells, more mesenchymal stem cells from the Academia Sciences. We have here one of our PhD, already postdoc, who has experience on stem cells, embryonic stem cells, who has been working with some first pilot studies here in Bulgaria, and other people representing IVF centers.
Okay. So if not, okay.
Okay. So basically, you talked that the
excuse me. Can I ask? Just can you announce where you come from and the name? Yeah,
okay.
Please.
My name is Ana Veiga. I'm from the Bulgarian Association for Regenerative Medicine. I just want to ask that it's very important the microenvironment for the stem cells. So when you transplant stem cells in a damaged microenvironment, in a damaged niche, isn't it more logical to introduce some factors basically to enhance their differentiation, because the microenvironment basically will influence their differentiation at the site of transplantation or something like this? What do you think about that?
You are talking about the possibility of doing cell therapy in a person that has a damaged tissue or organ, where you transplant some cells.